Good morning, friends. Welcome to Coffee Talk this morning. We're glad you're joining us this morning. We're glad you're joining us in our gymnasium here this morning. We'll get to that in just a second, but thanks for joining us. Thanks for having coffee with us, if you're having coffee, because I think that's a good way to start your day. And we start our day on these mornings by looking back, and then we look forward, and we see and hear what God has done. This last week, Jeff, you led us through the book of Esther. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whoosh, here's the entire book of Esther. Now take it all in. But there was a video, and hopefully you saw it, that has this nice little arc that actually shows this literary whatever that it tells me more often than not, God is a genius. Mm-hmm. And yes, there's a literary form to it, but yet, you know, this is something amazing that God did through all that. Like that just blows my mind. Mm-hmm. Like, and even the entire story of creation, right? Like fall and then, you know, coming back. Like it just...
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And the Bible Project people have not asked for my opinion, nor should they. But it does bother me a little bit that they do the whole thing upside down. They always have the big title of the story or the book at the top, and then they kind of swing around and through and sometimes back up. Really, it should be at the bottom, and then they would create that nice story. I'm going to do this so that you're looking at it right on camera. Write the nice story arc. Because whenever in school we had to write out a story arc and map a story, right? You'd start left and you'd work to right, and then you go up to the apex, and you come down. And they inverted all that thing, and or in their pictures as they walk through. But that's minor things.
I think the down arc also makes it like that Greek tragedy comedy kind of thing as well too, where like for Haman, right? And they said it a couple of times on the video. You know, like this is a very ironic twist within the larger ironic twist for Haman. Mm-hmm. It's a whole thing. Anyways, hopefully you've seen that Esther video. And then you were able to kind of join us.
And if we've got your appetite and you want to see it, just go to Bible Project. Just Google Bible Project Esther, and you'll get to that video. So,
fantastic videos, and like there's a couple of them on Esther, but hopefully you've checked that out. But Jeff, you kind of brought us to this one point, one moment where Mordecai is having this conversation with Esther, and it's about Mordecai kind of pleading with her and saying, you don't quite know everything that God might be placing in front of you, or even just adding the question mark, you know, like, what if? Mm-hmm. What if God laid this all out and put you here? Like, even just to go from just a person who, you know, sort of in some ways is kind of a slave, but not quite, right? Like it's a whole thing. To go from that to now queen, right? Mm-hmm. God laid this all out, and he's just kind of saying, what if? And so even in chapter 4, we have this kind of wrestling and conversation and all these things. And so it comes to this sense of like Esther saying, what should I do? What do I do? What if? And so that's maybe my question for us today is like, how have we been, or is there been times like when bigger or smaller kind of moments where you actually kind of had to just wrestle just a little bit and just say, what if God actually is going to lead me this way? Maybe it sounds crazy, but what if God leads me that way? Or like, you know, has there been times where we've had to kind of weigh the option of maybe risking, because she actually risked a lot. She actually risked life and death in order to just approach the king. Was there times where we have had to weigh risk versus hearing God's call and actually following through on that? Maybe even like in a conscience kind of way. Has there been times where you've had to weigh that a little bit?
I have some big ones, but I've shared those before about being called into ministry and weighing the jobs and all that. But more of an everyday one that comes to mind is I don't remember the circumstances, but it was a friend of my neighbor's. I was being introduced to a friend of my neighbor's, and this big guy, you could tell he worked out a lot. He's in a t-shirt, and he had all these tattoos. And I was like, how do I talk to this guy? But as I was introduced, he seemed like he was very, very kind and very interested. And I just had this feeling like you should ask a question about his tattoos. So I started looking at his tattoos, and I noticed that they did look pretty spiritual, actually. So I said something about him. I said, "Wow, your tattoos are very." They're very creative. It looks like you might be quite spiritual or something. I forget exactly what I said, but it was a risk because I was like, oh man, there's this big guy standing here, right? And if I say it wrong, you might be like, you're not a business. And like, who would actually do that in front of my house? But anyways, it was a little risky. And he was like, yeah. And he started explaining them and everything. And that little, that's just one little thing that pops to mind for me. How about you?
There's lots of little risks. I think that's a good way to put it, right? They might in the moment feel like we actually have a debate in the issue, and then you realize afterwards, like, that was dumb. Like, I worked that up into something it didn't need to be. I think of, like, in college when we were doing some street ministry stuff, it definitely was like one of those, sometimes you just feel like, okay, I need to go talk to that person. Right? Not that, the voice of God in this Bema light was like, go talk to them, right? But just you get like, I need to go talk to that person. And there's always that kind of then awkward, like, I don't know, I feel weird, I don't know what to say. Like, all of that we run through it. This feels like a risk. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it's really that, am I going to be, like, faithful? It's the same kind of thing we've been talking about in all of this series again. Are we just going to be faithful to the opportunity God's placed in front of us? And so that gets weighed. On less serious times, I think when you are in pastoral ministry and people ask, what do you do? And, and then it's that whole, do I just say, yeah, I work with youth and kids and leave it kind of generic? Or do I actually tell people, I'm a pastor and I work with youth and kids? And, that becomes one of those, sometimes one of those things, like, because you don't know, have they had bad experiences with the church? Are they, and then, like, I just want to get my hair cut. I don't need to hear, like, right, I don't, maybe not in the headspace to hear their complaints about God and all of that, but am I just going to see where this goes?
And sometimes it's like that internal wrestle of, like, do I, don't I? Like, risk and reward. Like, reward is, maybe, is God calling me to this? But, like, the risk of am I also going to maybe push this person away, or am I going to be pushed away, or am I going to get pummeled? Right? Like, there's that struggle.
I do have more to say, but I kind of want to hear, Kevin, just some of your personal stuff, and then I want to follow up on this a bit.
I think it can for sure range from big to small things, but really a lot of times it becomes, okay, the Holy Spirit has kind of said something to me, am I going to obey?
Yeah.
For me, that's kind of the wrestle, because they're like, I really don't want to do this. But God, in order to feel like I'm actually following you and following your way, I actually will do this, right? So, like, from maybe taking somebody in to come live with us to very small things like, okay, I was driving with somewhere and I was late one time and saw somebody on the side of the road, and okay, I really have someplace to be, but I actually do feel God saying, yeah, I think that person needs help, and I think you're actually the person that I'm sending. So I pull over, right? Like, and just going and helping them, and just those really quick moments where I think our world would just say, oh, that's your conscience. No, actually, for me, it's actually saying, yes, Jesus. Yes, I will obey. I will follow your leading, because this is a door that you've opened for me. But it also means I keep my eyes open as well too to some of those things. And I think, yes, it's much smaller, but in the same way, looking at Esther, like, she really had to weigh this out. Like, I could be put to death, or I could actually follow God's plan and actually save my people, and like just see an amazing thing that God did. And when you look at the whole story of Esther, and looking at this celebration of Purim that they brought us to as well too, like that's huge. Just in a small, yes, God, I will.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And we say, yes, God, I will, not knowing how it's going to turn out, right? And that's one of the cool things is we have this story wrapped, and we can kind of see the end result and go, oh, that was worth it.
Yeah.
Like, what if it ended very differently?
Yeah.
And you go, well, it wasn't worth it. Well, if the thing that counts is faithfulness to Jesus, then the end shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? To be able to say, I was faithful.
Yeah.
That's really important. But
Well, when we do see that,
Yeah.
we see all kinds of stories of that. People who are martyred, like for
Yeah.
them, it sure doesn't seem like it turned out.
yeah, that's a good point.
But, right, the
Absolutely.
Hebrews 11 passage is all about how the bigger plan is what they saw. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great point to bring us to. I just wanted to go back to the risk idea for a bit, because I think as someone who has been entrusted with young people and done some risky things with them. I don't mean, let's be clear, I don't mean like we're going to have like roof jumping competitions next week and that's risky. I just mean like, I recognize that like we have taken groups to Romania, we have taken groups to Mexico, we have taken people Port Hardy, which you think, oh, that's no big deal. Well, I think about the first time we went on a trip to Port Hardy and we had someone on our trip who had never seen the ocean before, well, maybe she'd seen had never been on the ocean on a boat before, right? And we're crossing on a ferry. And it's those new kinds of things that they go through. And for some parents, that's a lot riskier than for others. And I think what it got, this topic has me thinking about is how when I've done the risky things, sometimes it doesn't feel very risky to me. And maybe that's just because, young men, we typically don't weigh risk well, right? We don't think through the consequence. I know that's stereotypical. There's a lot of women like that too. But when you're young, you don't always weigh things well and think through the consequences. We just go, that sounds awesome. And so God comes along and says, hey, why don't you do this? That sounds awesome. And you go do it, not realizing. I think about like, some of that street ministry we did, and like being, 17 and 18 years old, walking down East Hastings on a Friday or Saturday night, like no big deal. Hey, we're going to go tell people about Jesus. I bet if my parents knew all of that'd have been terrifying. Because you think about like the downtown east side of Vancouver, and all that comes to mind is all the bad stuff that happens down there. And yeah, okay, maybe we just got away with it, whatever. But no, lots of people were praying, obviously. But that, to me, never felt risky. It didn't. It just felt like, this is cool. We're with a couple buddies, and we're gonna hand out socks, and we're gonna see if people are open to being prayed for and stuff like that, right? No big deal. I think about traveling to Argentina again as a 17-year-old, or driving across Canada with 6 other college students, right, to meet with people and share Jesus. Doesn't feel risky. But yet, as a parent now, and I'm going, what if my kid wants to do that? Wow. Or like even, Micaiah is going to be doing the DTP program at Green Bay this summer. Really doesn't feel risky to me, because like we know Jen and Sid and we know the leadership of the camp, and it's only right down the street. But we had a Zoom meeting last night with other parents whose kids are doing this program, and one of the things that hit me is there are people sending their kid from other provinces and entrusting them. And I bet you for some of those parents, because we had a meeting last night on Zoom of what you can expect. And I'm like, almost like, oh, we should just skip it. Like, I don't care. Like, it's going to be fine. But then I realized, I bet you some of these parents, this is really significant and important, because they have questions, and they see it as a risk, and they're not sure how it's going to turn out. And yeah, it's money. And now is it going to be my kid wanting to do this every summer when they should be working? And we, as parents, can start to weigh and see the future in a different way. And we see all kinds of risk that our kid doesn't. And we have to then ask the question, how tightly am I holding them?
Yeah.
And sometimes that risk is financial. We think, oh, they could be making more money in other fields, or this is costing me a lot of money, right? I've had parents tell me, I don't want my kid to go to Bible college because it's a waste of time and a waste of money. Wow, that's unfortunate. What if God really wants them to go? Right? And so what if that kid comes along and is saying, no, I think I need to go spend a year or two doing Bible college, and then I'll pursue a career. And that's a risk that, that both sides are weighing. And the question is, how is it going to sort itself out in a family? And so for those of you who have kids and youth, and, if your kids are grown, you've probably already realized, we weighed some risks there. And if you have kids, just know that it's coming, right? If they're going to be faithfully following Jesus, those days are coming. And I don't say, not to scare you, but prepare yourself.
But I would say following Jesus is a risky thing if you're going to do it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
It's when we start to say, whatever, that we actually probably stop listening to the voice of Jesus that actually is calling us into maybe some difficult places. Because even in a very safe and comfortable society, there's actually some risky places personally or financially or the trajectory of your life or whatever.
In all kinds of ways. And I just want, again, to parents of kids and youth, like none of us, I know it falls a lot on me as the youth pastor, but we don't take it lightly that you entrust, your kids with us. And when we plan ministry around here, we do plan a lot of stuff as a team. We don't take it lightly. We understand the risk that you're taking. I do think, like in 2005, I took a team to Northern Ireland, and just a few weeks ago, Shane and I were watching a movie about the troubles of Northern Ireland that talk about it only ending in 2007. And I'm like, oh yeah, we left Northern Ireland, and like a week later, there was rioting in the streets where we were. It felt totally safe at the time, and maybe 10 years ago, I remember a parent here telling me, who would ever go to, like, they were just like, I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, we're just following Jesus, and those are the doors he opened. As we said, we have this group, we really feel like we should be going and sharing Jesus in an international context, and that's the way God led, and we just followed. And so not to be a thrill seeker, but sometimes those risks are just super fun.
And following Jesus is a risky business. Following it is also the best decision ever, and it is a lot of thrill and adrenaline and all of that too. Also, speaking of thrill and adrenaline...
Ooh, there we go, segue. Nailed it.
You'll notice that we are standing in the middle of a pickleball court because we had a fantastic night on Tuesday night celebrating the Steve Jones Memorial Pickleball Tournament. I feel like there was one or two words in there that I keep forgetting, but whatever. We had such a good time. We'll talk a little bit more about it on Sunday morning.
Can you pickle a meatball? There's this idea. I know this is random. Can we pickle meatballs? Next year we're trying to brainstorm snacks that are on theme. So we got like deep fried pickle balls, which sounds great, like a ball of pickle, deep fried. That's going to be awesome. But could we just take a meatball and pickle it, and then serve pickled meatballs?
That would be interesting. We'll have to try.
If you know that whether or not this is successful, please message me. I'd really like to know if it's a thing we can do. Pickled meatballs would be amazing, and I want to try it.
I think that night probably is just going to be like pickle themed everything.
100%.
Right? It either has to be pickle form or it has to be in some kind of ball, like cheese ball or a
delicious.
Right? All kinds of stuff.
Just a dill pickle cheese ball right there. Boom, done.
So it was a wonderful success.
It was beautiful.
Just the point of just getting people together and having fun and just celebrating our friend Steve Jones and. And we'll talk more about it on Sunday and who won and all that. But you might have heard from the game.
Make sure you come to see who's limping on Sunday. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to point fingers and name names. You got to, But just it'll be fun to be here because I only caught like the first bit of it as a spectator, and I've started already hearing some stories, and I can't wait on Sunday morning just to see who's not here because they're still recovering, and who's limping, or who's on crutches,
or who's just walking around with a bag of ice.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it.
So we said on Sunday there's a whole bunch of stuff happening even this week in the next little bit. So that was this last Tuesday. Chris, can you tell us what's happening Friday?
This upcoming Friday?
So this comes out on Thursday morning.
I know that the ladies are gambling. I know, sorry. It's musical bingo. They are. And don't ask me what that is. I just know that it involves music and bingo dabbers.
Yeah.
And you should come if you're a lady and be part of it on Friday evening.
Yeah. And bring a snack to share.
Yes, snack to share.
Yeah. So
you don't have to bring your own music, as I understand. That's
it's all there, and so you just got to know your stuff. I will say I saw a bit of the playlist.
Okay.
So you have to know, fairly popular songs from the 50s to current.
Wow. So is this going to be?
No, sounds 50s to the 2000s.
Oh, okay. All right. It sounds a little bit like this is almost a battle of the generations music edition.
Yep.
That's kind of what I'm picturing in my head a bit.
Let me just say, as someone who doesn't know anything about music, you can still go and have fun.
Absolutely.
I would hear this and say, I don't want to come. I don't want you to hear that and say, I don't want to come. You will be I'm sure that you'll be with a team or something so that it will be fun for you.
Oh, I think it's like the pickleball thing. Like, we had people last night who had never held a pickleball paddle in their life and came and had fun. And I think it's the same thing.
And they either came and they either tried it on the court, or they just sat on the side and actually like had a really fun time cheering. And like it felt like you could still talk to the people across from you, and like everything. It was good.
Absolutely. So come and cheer, I guess. I don't know if Friday night's a time to cheer, but I guess if you come expecting it to be all from the hymnal, then you will be shocked. But it'll be fun.
Yeah. So that's happening this Friday, and then Sunday is St. Patrick's Day, which is kind of exciting as well too.
It's a beautiful day.
And then that actually means there's 2 weeks of spring break happening for those that have kids in school and all of that. And at the very end of spring break, Jeff, what's happening?
Easter. We have Good Friday service where we join with other churches from the west side and meet at Emmanuel at 10 o'clock on Good Friday, and that's always just a really great service. We all enjoy that. And then Easter morning we'll be here. We are going to start with a breakfast in the morning. We'll tell you a little bit more details on that. And then we're going to have our Easter celebration. So Easter is just the time, one of the biggest highlights of the year for a Christian, for our faith, because of what it represents. And so we're looking forward to celebrating that both on Friday and on Sunday, right after spring break, at the end of spring break.
At the end of spring break. Like I find it funny how that all kind of just works out, and just now we're into April, and so it's going to be a great time. So that's kind of the stuff that's happening in the next few weeks. Realize too that because of spring break, some small groups might hold off, or whatever your group has done, blessings on you in that. But otherwise, thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to read the book of Esther. It really does not take that long, but man, it's a great read. And it's a great testament of what God does, especially in the background through his people. And it's a fantastic book. So take that on, and then we will see you this Sunday.